is about making decisions. Decisions that define our path. At BMW I, we decided it was time to reinvent the car from the ground up. Making sure we were open for truly innovative ideas. We decided that the car we wanted must be electric and a statement for sustainability, featuring an inspiring and progressive design, and made of extremely light and super strong carbon fiber. And finally, we decided to make it more intelligent and added our promise of incomparable driving pleasure. We made all these decisions to offer you a choice. The all-electric BMW i3.
So this was a little introduction. Now I have the pleasure to introduce you to Hildegard Wortmann. She is responsible for this car. And not only for this car, she is responsible for the cars at BMW. She is Senior Vice President for Product Management for Automotives at BMW. She is the mastermind behind the innovation of BMW. I'm very proud that you are here. Hildegard, come. She is not an engineer, imagine, at BMW, not an engineer. She came from marketing, is now a real hidden champion, and it's wonderful that you're here. Hildegard will be interviewed by Deborah Ball from the Wall Street Journal. She is the head of the Wall Street Journal office in Italy. And please both come on stage.
We do. Thank you, Steffi. Great. All right, so good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, I can sense you're still alive here. It's pretty hot in here, but you are lucky because it's still a little bit colder over there than here. So thank you very much for having me here. Thank you, Steffi. Great opportunity. And I have one male colleague with me. And a couple of weeks ago, I told him, I need your help. But I had to think about how to get him here. And I wrote an email to him and said, look, I need your help. There's a conference where you need to do a little thing with me. There's a lot of creative, visionary, cool people. And by the way, it's all women. It took 5 minutes for him to call me. And I asked the first question and I said, why did you call me? Which part of my email exactly was it? Of course, he said it was the creative and visionary bit. Markus, I still don't believe you, but it's great to have him here. And we are both running the workshop later on in the next room. So yes, I'm responsible for the product management at BMW. And that means I start with the engineers and the strategy guys at a very early stage when we think about new cars, new concepts. And I think about the sales side. Can we sell it? At what price? What does the car need to have? What sort of engines? What sort of options do we need to have? In which countries can we sell it, etc. And then we drive the whole process until launch, and then another probably 7 years where the car is in the field. I do this on a global scale, so it's a worldwide responsibility. And I must admit, it's probably a very rare opportunity. And I always say I have one of the coolest jobs in the world to take such an influence on that. And I say that with all the pride because I think it is something very, very valuable. Saying that, I'm coming from an industry that has been, I would say, fairly conservative over the last 100 years. And yet, the last 10 years, we faced a lot of changes. I mean, imagine an industry that was always focused on 7 years, 8 years life cycles. There was fairly much building cars in metal and building big plants, etc. And suddenly we see customers' demand changing completely. The whole world of consumer electronics, I mean, basically everyone here holds something in his hand, her hand, with a handheld, with a smartphone, something. And wouldn't it be nice to use all of that seamlessly in your cars? Of course, and that's something you would expect from us as an automotive company. Please, BMW, solve this, and don't make it difficult for me to use all this stuff in the car. At the same time, you might be aware there's a lot of regulation stuff going on, so we need to come down with CO2 values, and we need to develop new technologies in order to fulfill regulations around the world. And that forces us into learning more about electrification. When we realized this, mid of 2005, 6 or something, we were realizing as well to really come up with something completely different. It would be impossible to do this within the given structures that we have as a big company that we are. So we did a little, I would call it startup within the company back in 2007. And honestly, I think it was quite remarkable to be given that sort of freedom within such a big, very structured and hierarchical organization to come up with a real startup. So we were placed outside on the factory side, above the Werksfeuerwehr, the fire brigade of the BMW plant, in a little space with fairly rotten desks and stuff, but highly creative area. And we had a cross-functional team where everybody was allowed to bring in ideas and come up with really latest stuff, and working completely outside of the normal given structures. So we came up with the idea of BMW I, which, you know, BMW I is one end of the bookend, and BMW M is the other one, and in between sits what we call the mother brand BMW. And within these two book brands, obviously, we have the chance to play the world of more power or more on the sustainability side. We launched in the BMW I brand more or less 2 years before anybody was able to drive a car on the street. So imagine you would launch your new product, whatever industry you are in, and you'd actually tell the world about it 2 years in advance without giving them a chance to touch, feel, drive, whatever it. So quite interesting approach, and it was an experiment where half of the world said, crazy, never gonna work. How can they hold up the communication for 2 years without showing a car, without having anybody to drive it? Forget it, bullshit, doesn't work. The other half said, well, okay, I mean, for the next 2 years, we simply don't have a car, so the communication guys should fix it and, you know, work across it. So we launched heavily in the social web, and the social media really picked up the idea well. And we had already 1.3 million fans on Facebook before anybody has ever seen what an i3 or an i8 could look like, which I thought was quite a remarkable approach for us. What was even more important for us is that we actually got really new customers into our brand. So obviously, BMW, a brand that is nearly 100 years old, has a very established customer profile. And the aim was really to get in some new customers. And when we look at the Facebook reviews today, or the market data we have, only 16% of our Facebook fans were known to BMW before. So the rest is really coming from new areas who have not been affiliated with BMW before, which I think is a great conquest machine, if you like. By the way, I hopefully you saw the cars outside. We just put it very much in the background, the i3. Sit in, try it. We have i8s outside, and my colleague Stefan is probably hating me for that, but we offer test drives, do we? If you want to go for a ride with Stefan, here it is. Stefan, I put you in a little difficult situation, but you're used to that, so we manage that. No, seriously, so the cars are really here for trying, and please feel free to sit in and try whatever you have. We have product genius outside, but I'm not here for doing a selling job. I think I'm rather here to really say it is possible within such a large organization like the BMW Group to come up with a startup, to do something completely out of your normal thinking, really step out of the box, and having a creative bunch of people being together and creating something which I believe is a revolution within automotive. So that's just a little introduction from my point of view, and I hope it was not too hard selling to you. But we continue a little bit, but before that, can I just ask, can we have that little movie about the i8? And then we get continued. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you for being here. Thank you.
I am the impossible. Too brave, too new, too difficult, they said. Unthinkable, not doable, utopian, they said. Unstoppable, I say. Essential, I say. I am stronger than words, made of carbon fiber, so tough, so light. I am the revolution, a powerful stride. Look at me. I am alive. I am real. I am here, ready to spread my wings. I am the possible. I am I ate.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes. Very interesting presentation. What comes to mind for me, you sort of mentioned a few points in your talk, but clearly traditional car makers are probably facing the biggest challenges that you've faced in decades. I mean, young people are wondering whether they should even own a car, and people who already do own cars, particularly at the high end, want even more and more, probably want as much buzz as they're getting out of all the devices that they have every day. They want, have greater demands, environmental standards, everything. Of course, this is all generating a lot of this buzz around Google and Tesla in particular. I mean, are those two, those two phenomena a threat to you? Do they keep you awake at night, for instance? How are you responding?
Well, certainly very interesting effects. I mean, on Tesla, I must say, it might sound strange to you, but I'm actually grateful that we have them. Why? Because I think they added some sort of sexiness to electromobility. So sometimes when I go to conferences or something and you talk about electromobility, oh God, okay. And if you look at what Tesla has achieved, certainly with the personality of Elon Musk, they've come up with something I would call sexiness of the business. But in the end, I mean, there's a big difference if you sell 20,000 cars, which is sort of the league of Tesla, or 2 million cars, which is what we are doing. So there's a different approach to business, but certainly what they succeeded in is making their stand and coming from the outside into automotive, which is an interesting approach. So we should always be open-minded and learn from that. On Google, I must say, I'm a bit more relaxed because we started with Google already. I mean, we had the first BMW internet in 2001 already, so long time ago. We had online access in the cars long time ago. And we have Google search in the cars since 2007. So we are partners who know each other for quite some time. The same with Apple. And we have Siri speech and stuff in there. So we are already fairly acquainted. But what is certainly important for us is the very much shorter development cycles that you know from the consumer electronics. I mean, you have your mobile phone every 6 months new, but we cannot develop a new car every 6 months. So the cycle and the speed is something we really have to get used to.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, if you think about the changes in the way we think about mobility in cars in general, I mean, I would think the way I approach a car and think of a car is probably not a whole lot different than my mother does. But I have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. When they come to get their driver's license, a day that I don't want to think about, what will their thinking around mobility in general, it's 15 years from now, what will, not just for cars, but mobility in general, what will be our thinking and our approach about it? How will it change?
Yeah, if I would know that, I could probably earn a lot of money. But no, certainly things are changing, and you see more and more young people who are no longer interested. I mean, don't know how you feel about it. When I turned 18, the coolest thing on earth was to have my driving license. And if you talk to, for example, young ones in Tokyo, for them it is not, I mean, the coolest thing is to have the iPad, smartphones, whatever. And that's more important to them than owning a car. But between owning a car and driving a car is a big difference. So they still like to have their individual mobility, and they still want to be flexible and go whenever they want, wherever they want, but not necessarily in their own car. Mm-hmm. So as a company, again, we need to learn to adapt to that and adapt quickly. And we have the whole area, perhaps some of you know Drive Now and Park Now, mobility concepts that we have established. And we have over 300,000 registered users on Drive Now, which shows people are interested in keeping their individual mobility, but not necessarily only with their own car.
So it'll be a combination of not just owning your own car plus other alternative ways? Like, what would be an average commute, for instance, in 15 years? What could you imagine?
I would imagine that, and I think what's important is the connectivity. So you can connect between your car sharing, a train, flights, whatever it is in your country, and really find the optimal way of doing it. But you also have to offer with connectivity, parking facilities, etc. So when you drive a car, whether it's your own or not, to have all the opportunities, where can I park, where can I go, what does it cost, etc.
And the traditional car makers can move quickly enough then to, I mean, as you say, the product cycles are so much different than they used to be.
Yeah, it's a challenge to us, but I think with the mobility services that we are offering, we've started very early, or some years ago already, and we founded BMW I Ventures, where we're really doing venture capital together with startups, developing new things like Park at My House. And it's new to us, but it's also very exciting to see it's not only about building the cars, but about taking a 360 approach to mobility.
In the I series so far, in my mind for BMW, for me it represents a car that maybe it's a guy who buys it more than 50. It's his reward for having arrived at a certain point in his life. It's expensive, it's a treat, it's a wonderful thing. But the things we're talking about in terms of connectivity is more, I think, of younger people under 40, whatnot. Is the I series already giving you some experience or learnings in terms of whether you can bridge that gap, whether your appeal to that sort of person who's arrived, you can translate that into a younger audience?
It's interesting. I mean, it's still early days, but it's interesting to see on i3 because we have a higher proportion of female users, female buyers, and we also have a much younger target group there. And I think it is about the appreciation of really being part of this really innovative concept and being in the first mover section. But I think there's equally a lot of interest in really having this sustainability approach to it. So I mean, BMW i is not just about two cars being environmental friendly, it's the whole value chain being completely on the sustainability side. So even the energy that we use for building the stuff, etc. So the whole value chain is environmental friendly and sustainable. And that is, I think, something that is no longer just a trend, but something that is really customer value and really required by younger audience, definitely.
It has to be baked into the product now. Absolutely. For anybody under the age of 40.
It's in the DNA.
And globally as well, of course, BMW is huge in China. Is there a difference in your thinking about, for all of these issues, mobility, for connectivity, from what your target sort of Chinese buyer is, and someone in Chicago or Boston or Silicon Valley, for instance, and how do you meld that thinking? You can't adapt stuff in every single country. Is it very different, sort of the emerging world, which is so important to the future of cars, and the developed world?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, what we can't do is do a specific car for each and every market, so we can't tailor that much. But what is important then is at the very early stage when we develop a new car, when we come up with the new ideas, to really have the input from all over the world. And yes, we are a Munich-based, Bavarian, traditional company, but we have to make sure we get all the input from all over the world. So, for example, we have technology offices in Shanghai, in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley, and the input in the early stages is so essential to have in order to go really with a worldwide offer and not just have a car and hope that the world likes it.
But can you think of an example of what something a Chinese buyer right now need? They tend to be younger, I imagine, for instance. So they have a different demands?
I mean, if you look at the car usage, and with all the respect to Munich, but Munich is a village if you compare it to, let's take Tokyo with 37 million inhabitants, where you really spend, equally in China, a lot of time standing in the traffic. And standing in the traffic, you use your car differently from driving around Deutsche Autobahn. Yeah? So obviously, for example, the comfort of a ride is very different when you stand in a traffic jam most of the time during your day when commuting, or whether you go fast speeding on the Autobahn. So we have to learn as well to adapt into both directions. And that had a significant impact for our engineers, who really had to say, okay, it's not all about the last 10th seconds on the Nürburgring. Yeah. It is also about a really comfortable, smooth, easy drive when you sit in Beijing and take 2 hours for 20 kilometers or 10 kilometers.
All the connectivity that involves, I imagine, if you're sitting in a car for a really long time.
That's true.
I think the idea is to open it up to questions now. If there are any folks who'd like to, we have about 5 or 6 minutes or so. If not, we can continue our chat. Are there microphones?
So any question? Come on, don't let us dry out here. There must be a question.
If not, I have another question. I mean, do we have somebody? No. in terms of car sharing and Uber and all these other challenges, I mean, you talk a little bit more about, it's interesting, I find it, again, I cover Italy, so I don't know a whole lot about, I don't cover cars necessarily, that you would want to engage in the car sharing space, and I guess that makes sense for you to, I would have thought it would be a competitor for you, and instead it's something you want to put your foot in there.
I mean, like we said before, because customer demand changes. I mean, we cannot just ignore that people not necessarily buying a car, but still want to use the car. So car sharing is a logic thing that you have to do if you want to be successful in that area. Mm-hmm. So, of course, the main business purpose remains to sell cars. But the ways of doing it become different, and there is a second Standbein, I would say, that we build up by doing Dienstleistungen and services. I have this little
fly going right around your head. That's right. I think we have a question here.
Yes. Hi, Hildegard.
Hi.
I have a question. You manage now e-mobility, which is one part of the future. How you handle in general future trends like robotics, that cars drive by themselves, etc. How you manage this process?
Very good question as well. I mean, this whole automatic driving, I think you've all seen this Google car, this little round little thing driving around like spaceship. Certainly very interesting for us as well. And I think if you look at all the driving assistance systems that you find in cars already today, I mean, you can have your car park on its own, and remote parking, etc., has become already fairly convenient. It's something that we continuously develop. But I mean, I don't know what your view on that is, but in the end of the day, I think it's nice if the car does the things on its own when it is hassle. If you stand in a traffic jam, it would be wonderful if you can take your hands off the steering wheel and just relax and, have lunch or whatever in the car. But there's also areas where you really just want to have fun for drive, and you want to drive yourself. And I think that's the sort of balance we need to get right. So whenever driving is not the fun part of it in a traffic jam or whatever things,
So you can increase the self-driving part of it?
Yes,
then,
and we do already. I mean, we have already the technology in the cars, not completely autonomous. So, and what is limiting us there is really the regulation. So we would need a different legal infrastructure, legal environment to allow it. But at the moment, by law, we are requested that the driver is still responsible. So you can take your hands off the steering wheel, but after 10 seconds, you have to push it back on to prove that you are still awake and still there. But that's more the legal environment. And I'm sure that's going to change, and it's going to take some more time. And there will be, again, new usage models of autonomous driving. Yeah? Well, you're laughing now because I took hands off. Back on.
Needs to get some points in.
Immediately. That would be a good idea. And I give you mine as well.
There you go. I think we have a question here.
Yes. Yep. Yes. Am I understanding you correctly in the sense that you are now designing cars for traffic jams?
Good question. Thank you for that one. I would refer to the ultimate driving machine, BMW, so definitely not. But in honesty, I think you have to take into consideration. I mean, look at China, look at a traffic jam in Beijing. It's not unusual that people spend an hour or even 2 hours each way commuting, sitting in traffic jams. So, I mean, there is no driving pleasure, but you can have a well-being pleasure. You can sit in a car that is a nice environment, that is really quiet, that has all the connectivity, that allows you to do all your work or whatever it needs to be connected with the world. And I think it doesn't matter whether it's driving or not driving, but you can easily feel, is it something where you feel comfortable and equivalent or adequate to that sort of situation. But certainly, we have BMW I, we have BMW M, and we stay the ultimate driving machine, so.
Yes, I understand that. If I was to sit 2 hours anywhere in Shanghai, I'd rather not sit anywhere in a car for 2 hours, but choose an environment which is a room or a pool or wherever, and then get from A to B more quickly instead of sitting on the road in a car. Wouldn't the aim be to make something more mobile instead of less mobile?
Yeah, obviously there are alternatives. You can use public transport, and I think the intelligence for us is to really combine. We call it intermodal routing, but you have to really combine the different forms of using or getting around in traffic. And I think the smart way is really if you find out exactly what is the best way to get where. And if your car tells you, drop me here, take the train, that's the better solution now because traffic is so heavy, I think that's then really useful. So you will see a merger of those different traffic alternatives. And in the end, you can't escape the traffic jam, but you can find your smartest way around it. That's what it's all about. Yeah.
I think we literally have 1 minute. Mm-hmm. If there's one more question.
In the front?
I think right here. Can we have a microphone reasonably quick?
One here and one there. So we do two, come on.
He's coming down. You got it.
Hi, I'm Feline from Circle of Values. When you say there's no alternative to a traffic jam, why don't you think about to de-stress this traffic jam? Because there is a certain end to it, I guess.
Absolutely right, but I think that's exactly what I tried to convey. I mean, we are trying to de-stress it by offering different concepts, by offering sharing cars, drive now, park now. These are concepts, and you could, if you look from the other side, you could say, come on, I mean, your business model is selling cars. Why are you interested in car sharing? But it's exactly for that reasons, because I think we have to come up with new concepts and we have to come up with a different approach to automotive and not just the hard selling of infrastructure, of hardware, of cars. Shall we do quickly the colleague over there?
I think
sorry, one more, come on. Steffi, sorry, it's me, but one. So you got to run quickly. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sure.
First of all, congrats to making this product vision you had become real and being able for us to look at. My question is, what's your marketing vision? What's the next step? How do you ensure now that in a few years we will all drive these BMW I's?
What do you mean by a few years?
Next year. What are your targets?
We still have cars this year. No. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think in the end of the day, I think car is still one of the most emotional purchases you can do because, I mean, besides all the rational aspects in which car you buy, it is something very emotional. And I think we have to build on that and use the strength of it. And I think on BMW I, it's a big progress for us in terms of modernity, in terms of language. You saw the visuals, etc. I think you can still feel it's BMW, but it is a bit different. And I think that's the sort of way we have to proceed in order to just open up the picture and become more, open-minded in terms of different target groups and different openings. But we will definitely always stay true to the core of BMW, which is the Freude am Fahren, or sheer driving pleasure. Yeah. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. It's very interesting stuff.
Great. Thank you to all of you for listening. Thank you.